Umar radiallahu anhu walking into Jerusalem, still with the servant on his camel, with a white garment with 17 patches covered in mud. And Sophronius, the patriarch, he says, لِمِثْلِ هَذَا تُسَلَّمِ الْقُدْسِ. To a man like this, Jerusalem is handed over. Like he's happy, subhanAllah. I mean, this is incredible. Look at this man. Look at his humility. Look at his justice. And Sophronius, the patriarch, he said to Umar radiallahu anhu, and he wasn't just praising him, he said, with a leader like you, your people will never be defeated. Now, before anything is handed over, the first thing that is done is that Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Sophronius have to sign some paperwork. The pact of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu between the Muslims and the Christians. Now, by the way that it's introduced, subhanAllah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هَذَا مَا عَهَدَ عَلَيْهِ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, this is a promise, a covenant that is given from the slave of Allah, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the commander of the Muslims, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Even, subhanAllah, the way he's writing the pact is not one of any type of pompous nature. If you're in Jerusalem at the time, you're watching the leader of the Muslims walk now with the patriarch of Jerusalem, and he's literally giving him a tour of Al-Quds. He takes him to where? The Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site in Christianity. Remember, this was the man that tried to get the cross out of Jerusalem because he just wondered, maybe, just maybe, they'll treat us the way the Persians treated us. Sophronius actually gives him the keys to the church. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu gives it to the Muslims, and Umar radiallahu anhu gives him a promise of its amana. This is one of the most beautiful things, subhanAllah, that till today, one singular family, a Muslim family, has held the keys to the holiest site in Christianity. They're actually known as Al-Nusayba. Who's Nusayba? Nusayba bint Ka'ab. Her son, Abdullah, was one of those that entered into Jerusalem with the Muslims, and his family assumed the keys of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Until today, every morning, a man from that family goes and opens that church for the Christians. Dhuhr comes in, the time of Dhuhr comes in, the patriarch, in an act of friendship, what does he say? He says, why don't you pray in our church? Did Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu respond and say no, because this is a place of kufr and, absolutely not, and forget you? And no, Umar radiallahu anhu said, listen, if I pray here, the Muslims are going to turn this place into a masjid one day. Years later, Muslims are going to come and they're going to say, Amir al-Mu'mineen prayed here, therefore this is our place. This is a masjid, this is not a church anymore. So Umar radiallahu anhu said, let me step out and pray outside, so that people can't claim your religious place later on. So my community doesn't steal your church later on. Because what happened? He goes outside, and literally the place that he prayed is now Masjid Umar. A masjid was built 100 feet away from the Holy Sepulchre called Masjid Umar. This meeting in Jerusalem was a reunion of Sahaba. A lot of these companions hadn't seen each other for a very long time. Think about who is there. Mu'adh bin Jabal, Abu Ubaidah, Amr ibn al-As, Khalid ibn al-Walid, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Sharhabil, Bilal ibn Rabah, Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu anhum ajma'een, are gathered in this place that they used to hear about in Mecca and Medina, and they used to pray towards. And subhanAllah, this was a reunion of sorts for them. They had not been together like this since Medina. And now they're all together in Jerusalem. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he saw Bilal radiallahu anhu, embraced him for a long time. And they both cried. Okay? Think about the meeting of Umar and Bilal. Bilal radiallahu anhu disappeared after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went out in jihad, but he didn't want to be anywhere near Medina. Umar doesn't leave Medina. He hasn't seen Bilal for all of these years. So he hugs Bilal radiallahu anhu and they both cry. Umar radiallahu anhu says to Bilal, Ya Bilal, This is one of the days of Allah. When you look throughout history, there are a few days that stand out. Ya Bilal, we are in one of the most momentous days in the history of the world. هذا يوم من أيام الله. أذن لنا يا Bilal. Can you make adhan for us, O Bilal? Bilal radiallahu anhu says, I took a promise on myself that I will never do adhan for anyone after the Prophet ﷺ. I can't do it anymore. If it's not Rasulullah ﷺ saying to me, Adhin ya Bilal, I can't do it anymore. I will never do it again until I meet the Prophet ﷺ. I took a promise. Umar radiallahu anhu pushes him. This would make the Prophet happy. So he talks to him with the love that he has of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're holding back out of your love of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This would make the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam happy. And if he were here, he would have ordered you to do the same. He would have asked you, Adhin ya Bilal. You think of the Prophet ﷺ who ordered you to make the adhan in Mecca and then in Medina, and none of the other Sahaba had the honor of being ordered to do so first. You think that the Prophet ﷺ would have passed you up if he were here? Adhin lana ya Bilal. Bilal, please, make adhan for us. And so, Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu goes to make the adhan. Fatih Mecca, the first person to make adhan in Medina. And now Jerusalem, the first Muslim that's going to go up there and say Allahu Akbar in Al-Quds in Jerusalem. And when Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu got up to make the adhan, all of the Sahaba cried, including Bilal radiallahu anhu. Hearing his voice in this place where these Sahaba are together, and they said, subhanAllah, that Umar radiallahu anhu on that day wept so much that he fell to his knees while Bilal was giving the adhan. And the Sahaba were consoling him. Why? Because suddenly, this wasn't Jerusalem anymore, this was Medina. It took them back. They were remembering their time with the Prophet ﷺ. They had not had this moment for decades now, where Bilal is giving adhan, and subhanAllah, it took Umar radiallahu anhu back. SubhanAllah, this marks the two most momentous salahs in this place, the gathering of the prophets. Imagine a jama'ah, a gathering, where Rasulullah ﷺ is the imam, and praying behind the Prophet ﷺ is Ibrahim alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, Ayyub alayhi salam, Dawood alayhi salam. Imagine that jama'ah. Imagine walking into a musalla and all of those people are praying behind one imam and the imam is Rasulullah ﷺ. That's the salah that took place in that place, that happened there. And now you have the second most noble salah, the gathering of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. Umar radiallahu anhu is the imam, and all of these people are praying behind Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. This was the place also that when the Prophet ﷺ on the night of Al-Isra wal Mi'raj, Jibreel alayhi salam gave him to drink what? Milk. And the dream of the Prophet ﷺ, when the milk was coming through his fingers, was who was catching that milk? It was Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now at that time, that area was what? A dumpster. SubhanAllah. It's a dumpster. And when Umar radiallahu anhu sees it that way, Umar and the Muslims begin to clean up the dump themselves. So Umar gets down with the Muslims, with the Sahaba, and they are cleaning up that area. The first time the Muslims can pray in Mecca publicly was because Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was walking in front of the Muslims in one line, and Hamza radiallahu anhu in the other. The first time Muslims could pray in Mecca publicly. The first Muslim after the Prophet ﷺ to pray in Al-Aqsa is Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our inability and to make us amongst those that find izzah in Al-Islam.